Are you a kin because you're kin? Or are you kin because you're a kin? The Barbie movie is way better than I thought it would be. And I'm sure by the title, you're expecting me to either complain that it was too feminist or talk about how much I love Kinland and wish I had a Mojo Dojo Casa house of my own. And while I would love having a Mojo Dojo Casa house, that's not what I want to focus on. I want to talk about how I think a lot of people actually misunderstand the movie as a whole. There are two broad categories that people fall into with this movie: people who like it and people who don't like it. Basically, all the people who don't like it are guys. The only woman I've met so far who hasn't been a fan of the movie is my mom, and that's because she's old. But even she leaned more towards liking it than disliking it. I was pretty shocked with how many guys I met who didn't like the film. Like, it's a great movie that explores the struggle of being a man. So, like the great detective I am, call me Sherlock, I did some research and I found out that these men fit into some pretty specific categories. Category one is they don't talk to women. Now, it's important to note that a lot of men who don't talk to women like this movie, which we'll get to later. But for now, let's focus on the dudes who don't talk to women and don't like the movie. You see, these guys get no play, and so therefore they aren't big fans of the film. I'm not necessarily sure why this is the case, but it's a pattern I've seen. If I had to guess, it's because their lack of ability to talk to women just means the movie went over their head. Category two are guys in toxic relationships. You see, these guys are in a relationship that doesn't make them feel enough, and the movie calls them out. The movie makes lots of jokes at the expense of toxic relationships, which these guys are in and therefore take personally, which leads to them disliking the movie. The final group of guys are your average Andrew Tate fanboys who think that Kinland is an ideal world and believe that the patriarchy is actually the solution. They don't like how the movie makes fun of this and, like the other group, take it personally. So they get triggered and don't like the movie. Anyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed with satire. I love taking the bit too far. I will sacrifice a friendship if it means committing to the bit. And that's the humor that's in the Barbie movie. It's extremely satirical, so I can understand why the guys mentioned above aren't the biggest fans. They aren't able to open their third eye and see past the satire and understand the film on a deeper level. I feel obligated to point out that there are a lot of guys who like the movie who I don't believe they see past the satire either. They out here singing "I'm Just Kidding" karaoke while not understanding the true, deep meaning of that masterpiece. These dudes have no game. They are socially awkward, so they enjoy when the movie brings down the macho man stereotype. But that's just because they don't understand how awesome it is having a brewski with the homies in a Mojo Doja Casa house. My point with all this is I think this movie is extremely misunderstood. It peeves me to no end when I see people talking about how the movie hates men or is just some dumb comedy because it's actually really deep. As someone who is constantly referred to as a himbo, I relate greatly to Ken's character. And I'm not talking about his overplayed, overdramaticness, but what he actually represents. Ken shows the struggle of being a guy's guy in a world where that isn't really wanted. And before you pick up the torches and the pitchforks, I'm not saying that being a guy is harder than being a woman. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not ignoring the struggles that women go through. All I'm saying is that guys, like everyone else, have their own hardship, and the Barbie movie does a surprisingly good job of exploring this. Before I dive into why I think this movie is so deep and impactful, I want to review the movie as a movie, kind of review its components from as objective standpoint as I can. So yeah, before we get started, just gonna let you know up front, I give the Barbie movie a solid 9 out of 10. My favorite part of the movie is the performances, specifically mine. I mean, Ryan Gosling's performance. Margot Robbie also does a fantastic job. But I'm just biased towards my own performance. I love how over the top everyone's performances are. There's never a dull moment, which does a fantastic job of keeping my ADHD riddled brain paying attention. I think Will Ferrell also does an amazing job of being the stupid CEO and enjoyed all the scenes he and his little army of associates are in. Another part of the movie that for sure needs recognition is the overall appearance or style of the film. I love the set of Barbie Land. They do such a good job of making it look fake yet so real. I also think it's hilarious that this movie like legitimately caused a national shortage for the color pink. The costume designs are also amazing. From Barbie's pink cowgirls get up to Ken's beautiful, majestic fur coat. It's all amazing. The added bonus that basically everything we see is actually a Barbie product adds to the film, in my humble opinion. The scene with Ken throwing Barbie's clothes out of his Mojo Dojo Casa house and each of them being plugged to me is the funniest thing. The writing of the movie is also super good. I find the humor in the film really funny, as I briefly mentioned earlier. I love how all the characters lean into being overly stupid. I know that this isn't everyone's sense of humor, but it is mine, and this is my movie review, so deal with it. I also enjoy the pacing. The movie goes by fairly quickly because it does a great job of keeping my attention, which a lot of movies struggle doing. So, to quickly sum it all up, the movie's funny, looks pretty, has fantastic acting, and is well written. That's why I feel like this movie deserves a solid 8 out of 10. And you may be thinking, but you think you gave it a 9 out of 10. And I do. What bumps this movie up from an 8 to a 9 for me is the meaning of the movie. And yes, technically that falls under good writing, but as I talked about earlier, I feel like this movie is greatly misunderstood. So I want to take a segment to talk about the true message of the movie, or at least my interpretation of it. This movie is not a movie about feminism. Yes, female empowerment is a big part of it, but that's not the overarching theme. The theme of the movie is self worth. Barbie learns that her self worth doesn't come from how others see her or interact with her. Ken learns that his self worth doesn't come from his girlfriend or the fact that he's really good at beach. Their self worth comes from them. That is the theme of the movie. My girlfriend is obsessed with this movie and holds it in such high regard. She says that it's super important for women empowerment and such, but I'm a dude. I can tell that the movie does a lot for women, but whenever I watch it, I pay attention to what it has to say for men. So, unlike a lot of men, I'm not going to sit here and talk about something I don't understand, but instead focus on the message that the movie has for men. You are enough. That's the main message for men. That you are fine with being who you are because you are you. There's no need to try and be something you're not. Your value doesn't come from how tough you are. It doesn't come from how attractive you are. It doesn't come from the people around you. Not to trauma dump or anything, but self worth is something I greatly struggle with. That's why I relate to Ken so hard. As a man, sometimes that's all I'm seen as. I'm just a dude. I'm just Ken. Ken desperately wants to be noticed, treated with value. Barbie wasn't even planning on inviting him to her big party. She only did after he asked if he could come over. Ken didn't even have a place to sleep at night. There was no respect for him. He was just Ken. That's why it's such a big deal to him when someone asked him for the time. For the first time, someone noticed him and treated him with respect. Yes, this is an extreme, but I find it relatable. The question, how are you, is now a gesture. It's not a genuine question. Many people see and recognize you, but it's rare to be seen for who you truly are. Something I didn't pick up until the second time I watched the movie is when Ken wears his Knuff hoodie. It's the first time we see him in Barbie Land not showing off his abs and his sick, sick guns. He doesn't have to show those off because he has value without them. He has value because he exists. Men mental health is not taken seriously, and this movie does such a good job of exploring that concept. Ken represents male mental health. Another important theme of the movie is that grass isn't greener on the other side. When Barbie and Ken go to the real world, it's lacking. And when Ken brings the patriarchy to Barbie Land, even he says it wasn't as good as he thought it would be. As soon as he learned it wasn't all about horses, he lost interest. And even though in the movie it says Ken brainwashes the Barbies, he does no such thing. All he does is bring in a new foreign concept. And because the grass seemed greener on the other side, people listened. This movie teaches men that they matter because they exist. It teaches them that it's okay to want people to show genuine interest in the things you care about. It's okay to be quote unquote macho with your bros as long as you don't take it too far. It teaches us that grass isn't greener on the other side and that we just need to water our own grass. This movie teaches us that we are enough. That's why I give it a 9 out of 10.